Hello, my name is Justin DeClue, and I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And you're listening to the Important Cinema Club. And today we're doing our Canadian due diligence for Canada Day, July 1st.
Canada Day is coming up?
Yeah, that's right. We're doing the holiday that is just a couple days before the 4th of July.
So fitting.
It's so sad.
We're self-employed. Canada Day doesn't mean anything to us
No,
anymore.
I didn't even know it was coming up until someone was like, oh yeah, we can do it because it's a long weekend. And I was like, long weekend?
Mind you, I love my country.
Oh, love it.
It's so great.
Yeah, no complaints with any kind of,
Our history isn't drenched in blood.
Nope. There's no mass graves constantly being found.
The country works perfectly today. Our government is great.
Oh, wait. Our government is the brother of the crack-smoking mayor? What?
But hey, we're talking about a Canadian filmmaker on this episode. A filmmaker.
The most Canadian filmmaker?
Oh, big words, big words. But actually, I think there's something to that. I mean, listen, anybody can be Adam McGoyan. Sorry, not anybody can be Adam McGoyan. That's the whole point.
Well, at a certain point, they can become Adam McGoyan.
But a model of like a real Canadian director career is Bruce McDonald.
A guy that the majority of his films all take place in Canada and love to tell you that it's Canada. And I'm sure that he's made another film outside of Canada, but like it's seemingly this is his home base. And when I moved to Toronto and I saw one of his films and learned the legend of Bruce McDonald, a Bigfoot-like figure, not that he's not
a recluse.
No, not a recluse, but like, wait, look, there he is.
With the
just
hat.
walking down the street. Yeah. He wears a cowboy hat all the time.
So I respect Bruce McDonald's career, and I was very eager when you suggested him for an episode for a number of reasons. First of all, he has a very wobbly and inconsistent filmography, which has several, I think, solid gold bangers, a number of, frankly, solid movies, solid 2 or 3 base hits, a lot of ambitious attempts, and some stuff in there that's very, very obviously the work of a professional filmmaker for hire.
Wait, are you trying to tell me that 2007's Killer Wave wasn't a Bruce McDonald passion project?
When you go on Letterboxd, his most popular movie is Pontypool, which is a very clever and resourceful horror movie. It's become something of a cult film. Many of you listening might have seen it. His second most popular in terms of raw view counts is something from the year 2010 called My Babysitter's a Vampire, the Movie.
Now, this was a Canadian production because I watched the first 10 minutes before going, I've had enough of this. Produced by Teletoon.
Yeah, so we know what that is. The reviews aren't particularly good.
No, but if you were the very specific age for when this movie came out, you'll see a lot of 5-star reviews, and this is something that defined my childhood.
Yeah, so there you go. But I don't feel like those movies like Killer Wave or My Babysitter's a Vampire have really dented or even really overlapped at all with his reputation.
I think it's because he has one solid gold classic hardcore logo and that you can never really take that away from him.
Yeah, but also like it's so obviously, like you look at his filmography, it's so obvious what the passion projects are. And there are so many filmmakers, so many Canadian filmmakers who have 1 or 2 really interesting movies they made in the 1980s, and then
they just work in television.
Yeah, Hallmark movies after that. And he has been able to consistently, he does a lot of TV, he does a lot of commercials, a lot of those sort of hack-work movies, but he always, every couple of years, has, a significant personal film that debuts at TIFF.
Now, I watched one of those TV movies that he made, The Love Crimes of Gillian Guess from 2004. It is 100% a Bruce McDonald movie. So it feels that like if the opportunity is presented, like the music is done by Broken Social Scene, and it starts with like a grandiose single take, like Touch of Evil style, one long tracking shot. So like if he can, and it's all of his cast members are in it too. So like even some of the do it for them projects, he can bring a little bit of his particular weirdness and formal invention, which is present in all of his films, other than maybe My Babysitter's a Vampire.
Yeah, innocent till proven guilty. I haven't seen My Babysitter's a Vampire, but something I like about all the movies that we watched this week, and something that I think unites them as different as some of them are, and we did watch one of the movies that when you're looking at his Letterboxd filmography, you think, oh, that one doesn't look... In these movies, you see an affectionate but very unsentimental gaze towards Canada itself. Canada, it's a hack, overused phrase, but Canada is a character in his movies. The cities or the towns that he shoots in, the highway is outside of the towns that
but
he
all
shoots
the characters are basically defined by being Canadian. Like, when you talk about his first film, Roadkill, I recently saw the movie yesterday when it played at the Review Cinema, and Don McKellar did a Q&A afterward, and he said, like, we were making the film as a reflection of the American road movie. That, like, what is the Canadian take on this?
And Bruce McDonald is one of the defining members of what was called the Toronto New Wave, and the best movies of this movement don't feel like they're being made to the specifications of, Canadian content, but nevertheless feel deeply Canadian. There's a whole infrastructure of Canadian movies. Let's call it the Score a Hockey Musical industrial complex.
I mean, it's not that.
The Passchendaele, the Paul Gross kind of.
Are there really that many of those? Like, it felt like for a while you were inundated with them, but now there's like nothing, because like there's no more homegrown Canadian kind of like I'm almost nostalgic for Score the Hockey Musical, eh?
But these movies were kind of being made against that backdrop,
100%.
I think. And they depict a Canada that is, again, it's affectionate, but it's strange. And I was struck by how kind of ugly Canada looks in these movies in a way that I liked. I liked seeing, I liked movies that weren't like, Canada, it's so goddamn beautiful. Like,
well, especially in his early films that are all road movies, he's like, all right, let me show you the shitty Ontario towns that you hit if you drive like an hour outside of any major city.
And I think through that unrelenting ugliness, a certain austere beauty emerges, if that makes any sense at all. Like in Hardcore Logo, all those shots of the van just going through rural Alberta. It's like, God, it's so stark. It's so austere that, that's it. That's my country right there.
Have you ever visited Alberta?
No, but I feel it,
In your bones as a Canadian.
I visited Ontario because I live here. So Roadkill certainly spoke to me.
So Bruce McDonald gets started in the industry, as Will mentioned, doing like music videos. Something important about Bruce McDonald you need to understand is that he is like a music guy, and that defines all of his cinema. That he loves it, and it infuses all of his major works.
Yeah, that's right. My Babysitter's a Vampire aside, I think his reputation really rests on 3 movies made between 1989 and 1996 that are, I don't know if they were conceived this way or even really marketed this way, but they're sort of his rock trilogy. Mm-hmm. Roadkill, Highway 61, and Hardcore Logo. Hardcore Logo is really, again, apologies to My Babysitter's a Vampire, but that's the one that his reputation, I think, really rests on.
Dance Me Outside. Have you ever seen that one? It's really good.
I've not, no.
About a bunch of teenagers on a reservation, and it even led into a TV series called The Res. Now, issue with Dance Me Outside is, was it directed and written by white guys? Yes, it was, but it's still a great movie when you watch it. And that I talked to people in Canada who watched it a lot because it played a lot on APTN, the first national Indigenous broadcaster. A lot of his early movies, I also think, made quite an impact on people because they played a lot on channels like City TV. Mm-hmm. And the reason they played a lot, as we've said before when we talk about Canadian stuff, is that I don't know how it stands today, but there's like a mandate that you have to play a certain amount of Canadian content. So you'd see the same things over and over and over again.
That's right. On radio and on television, I believe there's a lot of controversy right now in regards to like streaming platforms.
Yes, impose it on it. That's what I would say.
Well, yeah.
Raise it. Force them to do more Canadian stuff.
Here in Canada, there are certain songs that I think are really
watching one of his movies, Picture Claire, there were like songs that I heard. I was like, how do I know that song? And then I looked into it. I was like, yes, I've heard it a million times, because that's one of the like, we can play this on the radio and hit our quota that we need for Canadian content.
Bit of a digression, but if I hear Black Velvet by Alana Miles one more time, it's Black Velvet.
Is that like a North American hit?
No, that is a Canadian hit.
Really?
That is Canadian,
so times,
Canadian content. You cannot turn on a radio to any classic rock station and not hear that song. So we mentioned briefly the Toronto New Wave. What was it? Was it a movement?
They all knew each other.
Movement? Well, that's the thing. Its members include Adam McGoyan, Patricia Rozema, whose film I Heard the Mermaids Singing was really the breakthrough. It played at Cannes and was distributed around the world.
So basically, for any of these movies to get any respect, they need to play internationally. That's how it works in Canada.
That's how it was then. It's how it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, Nobody Waved Goodbye, the great classic. Like, that was a movie that came out here, had no
one
notice.
cared. Yeah.
And then I think it played at the New York. Yeah.
Hey, guess how Roadkill got attention? Did it play maybe in America? Yes, it did. And that's why I got attention.
But yeah, Ron Mann, Peter Mettler, John Grayson, these were a
lot of them didn't make a lot of movies, though. Like, Ron Mann has only a handful to his name.
Ron Mann Ron Mann runs Films We Like, the film distribution company. And Ron Mann's made a lot of documentaries. That's his sphere.
I think, like, Comic Book Confidential is the one that
was a pretty huge one. That got international distribution.
Yeah, he did one on Altman. I'm looking at his list.
Grass.
Yeah.
Grass was inescapable for a while. At least I think it was.
If you're in Canada.
If I can remember after all that weed I smoked. Bruce McDonald, like a lot of these filmmakers, was a graduate of the school that was then called Ryerson University, recently renamed Toronto Metropolitan University. And much like how the new Hollywood filmmakers like Scorsese and Spielberg were that first American generation that came out of film school, that was kind of the case with these directors. They also benefited from the establishment of the Ontario Film Development Corporation in 1986. This offered a new public funding source, not the first one, there was Telefilm and a few others, but this was aimed specifically at fostering a film community in the province of Ontario. So the films that they made were kind of different than a lot of the Canadian movies being made before that. They weren't exploitation films like the tax shelter era of the 70s.
The good era.
Hey, I love those films.
Yeah.
They also, though, didn't feel, I think, quite like Canadian content in the way that,
Well, let's talk about Bruce McDonald's first feature film, which he did do after editing a few Adam McGoyan films from the real, like, classic early feature film
speaking
period.
parts era, yeah.
Roadkill was supposed to be a documentary following a band. And the band, just like in the movie, which is about an assistant played by Valerie Buhagiar, she has to chase down a band that stopped making their tour dates. That's basically what happened to the band they were following, that the lead singer took a vow of silence like he does, like the lead singer in Roadkill. And at the last minute, they decided, all right, can we have the film equipment? We have like the stock. Can we just make a movie? And Don McKellar was like, yeah, I can write something. His first script was like 30 pages and they kind of made it up as they went along. Now, it's a little weird that like all the major Canadian films, they all started as documentaries. Like,
did Nobody Waved Goodbye start as a documentary?
It did indeed.
Right, about troubled youth or something.
Yep. And also Leopold Z, the Gilles Cal film, started as a documentary as well and then turned into a narrative film.
And Videodrome was a documentary about a man who got a vagina in his stomach.
And that was also about City TV, speaking of channels that these movies would play on.
So yeah, this movie, Roadkill, has a very special place in my heart because a lot of the action takes place in Sudbury. That's where it begins. And then it takes Highway 69 north all the way to Thunder Bay. And I think every small town or city deserves something like this. It becomes a road movie very early on that I guess I would describe it as being sort of like early Jim Jarmusch meets Richard Linklater meets No Wave meets The Kids in the Hall.
Yeah, a little bit of like Kids in the Hall surrealism that pops up here now or there.
Not like ha-ha funny exactly, but a sort of off-kilter humor to it. As you mentioned, the main character, Ramona, is this intern at this Toronto record company that's been dispatched to Sudbury to find this band that's gone missing, the star band at the label. And she finds them almost instantly, and then they disappear again. And she goes on this road trip.
An odyssey, if you will.
Up to Thunder Bay. And along the way, she meets a number of strange characters. The first strange character that we meet is actually the cab driver who drives her from Toronto to Sudbury. And she says, I can't afford that. And he says, don't worry, I'll drive you anyway. And his main feature is that he's constantly name dropping and telling stories about all the famous rock artists that he may or may not have worked for or met.
Don McKellar during the Q&A last night was like, that was a real guy. That's basically how he was, always telling these wild stories.
I used to know a band. I don't want to name any names, but imagine taking a president and then adding an airplane to their name.
And maybe I suggested the song that, Little Animal, White. I think you can figure it out.
There's also Don McKellar, of course, the muse of the Toronto New Wave. He appears as an aspiring serial killer. He hopes to become a serial killer.
He wrote this movie too.
And there's a funny line where he says words to the effect of, oh, everyone thinks you have to be a serial killer, you have to move to LA to make it. That's colonial Canadian mindset. It's kind of a mission statement for like a Canadian director's career right there. There's a mysterious bald-headed man that she runs into. There's also Bruce McDonald himself as a documentary filmmaker who films roadkill. And he says at one point, words to the effect of, it's a metaphor for something. It's a capitalism. We're all roadkill. Mm-hmm. And I guess, that could be interpreted as McKellar kind of making a joke about this movie itself, which may or may not mean anything, is very much about the journey and about kind of the strangeness and how amusing and weird and kind of off-kilter all the stops she makes are.
And Bruce showing up in the movie and his documentary crew is like that kind of formal narrative breaking that he loves to do in his best movies, like making you realize that you're in a film within a film and all of the kind of things that go into telling these kind of stories. So this picture also shot Academy ratio, stark black and white, looks great. That kind of like, me and my friends, we jumped in a van and we just went, down Ontario and we filmed all this stuff. And you get all these beautiful shots of like broken down drive-ins, which they only film because they asked somebody in town, like, what do you guys do around here? Oh, we hang around at the drive-in. Oh, is there a lot of movies that play? No, it's closed. We just hang out in our cars.
God, it just has like a nice vibe to it. As sort of strange and off-putting as so many of the characters are, the movie has this improvisational energy. It does feel like it's making itself up as it goes along. It kind of feels like free associative writing on film.
But then it all comes back together at the end, man.
It absolutely does. And I think it really feeds off the energy, or maybe the anti-energy of the landscape around it, the strangeness of the road.
The ending of the movie, Don McKellar said that we just wanted it to be a reaction to like the bummer 70s road pictures like Easy Rider, where it has to end in some kind of destruction. But what if it was a bit of a joke when it happened? And you know what? That's what they did.
You saw this movie with an audience, probably a pretty big audience last night.
They were laughing it up the entire way through.
I was curious. Yeah, I was just curious how this would play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, they were all there to see it, even though during the Q&A, there were a lot of people that asked questions that were like, I just saw the title Roadkill and I wandered off the street. And
I wanted to see more animals die.
Yeah. Questions kind of like that. So it's interesting that people are still discovering it, especially that they're not going to be stumbling upon it on City TV anymore.
Well, there's been a new restoration. It's just been put out by the Vinegar Syndrome partner label Canadian International Pictures in a beautiful new transfer.
Bruce McDonald movies have always been one that in Canada you would see pop up on DVDs and special edition. I have the DVD of Roadkill, Highway 61, Hardcore Logo, that 2-disc set. So there has been like a wave when like physical media was first starting of like, oh, these are the important Canadian films. Let's get them out there. I mean, specifically Hardcore Logo.
Well, that and $2 will get you a cup of coffee as a Canadian filmmaker, because eventually you have to make...
you got to pay the bills.
My Babysitter's a Vampire, the movie.
Man, someone should take a shot every time Will mentions that title, because...
Bruce McDonald, if you're listening to this, and you may very well be, I mean, hey, we're in Canada. I just want to say I have nothing but respect for you. And
you're going to be walking down the street and a man in a cowboy hat, his fists flying at you.
I'm just having fun with a very amusing title.
So Hardcore Logo. When did you see this movie?
Oh God. I mean, I saw it a long time ago when I was pretty young.
You had to do your duty, right? You're like, Hardcore Logo, very important Canadian film. I'm gonna see it.
But probably when I was in high school, I saw it.
I mean, we're both two rock and roll guys, so this really speaks to us, right?
I do think it speaks more to me now, frankly. This movie did hit me hard now as somebody who, I'm so tired of talking about getting older on this podcast, but getting older has been one of the I was about to say getting older has been one of the defining things in my life. Of course it is. It's the defining thing of everyone's life.
I hate to break it to you, Will. Getting older is going to be the defining thing until your life is over.
Until there's a really defining thing in your life that comes.
The last thing, if you will.
Yeah. But I don't know. I'm always amazed by revisiting movies that I saw 15, 20 years ago and then finding them to be completely new movies.
I saw you just tears streaming down your face as you're watching Fubar and you're like, it's my life.
Oh my God. The Trailer Park Boys. They used to remind me of being young, but now...
Yep. So Hardcore Logo, if you speak to anyone that's in a band, they've seen this movie and they're like, this reflects the experience of having to basically live a creative life with multiple people.
Yeah. What happens when you monetize a friendship, Justin?
Yeah. Well, we never speak unless we're obligated to.
It's Richards and Jagger, separate dressing rooms. But that's not true.
Will Sloan is the madman in our relationship. He's the Joe Dick, if you will.
Yeah, and that drummer.
Oh, you're the drummer?
Yeah, that's me. So, yeah, God, you can smell this movie, can't you?
Oh, you absolutely can.
This is a movie. This is something I've forgotten about this movie. This is a movie of shitting and pissing and cigarette smoke and just the sweaty unpleasantness of being in a small tour bus against this bleak gray landscape that is rural Alberta.
Now, this is a mock documentary in the style of Spinal Tap, if you will. But Bruce McDonald can't help himself and throw in like formal conceits, which you could argue someone like Errol Morris does in his movies too, kind of like interstitial pieces. But it's very McDonald-esque in the way that he would continue to do throughout his filmography.
And you mentioned Spinal Tap. Obviously, the movie invites comparison.
I mean, they make a joke like, unless there's a gardening accident or something like that.
I think when I was younger, when I was a kid, I was probably expecting something a little more Spinal Tap.
Like funnier?
Yeah, but this is a movie that's very much about like sadness. It's a movie about getting older and worse.
Basically, after 5 years, a band, Hardcore Logo, get back together for a benefit show, and the lead singer of it, Joe Dick, played by Hugh Dillon, convinces the rest of his bandmates that, hey, let's go on a small tour and like, not a last hurrah, but like, let's just do it. Let's go.
And the band hasn't really gotten along. They had a touch of success, basically. In the late 70s, they had one album that did pretty well.
And they never got signed to a major label, and they say they were about to when Joe Dick basically destroyed it right on stage.
Right. And Billy Talent, the lead guitarist, played by Callum Keith Rennie.
We all love the band Billy Talent, right? They got the title from this movie.
That's right.
Does anyone outside of Canada know who that band is? Speaking of another band that was on the radio all the time.
But he's kind of looking for his opportunity to join this big band from Los Angeles.
Jennifer.
That's right. And he's rejoined Hardcore Logo, and the other bandmates think that this might be permanent. Especially Joe thinks it might be permanent and hopes it will be permanent. And the movie follows the gang along on their tour in the back of this shitty tour bus.
Boy, I hope they get along the entire way for the 90 minutes and that nothing gets in between them.
Bruce McDonald, of course, is a character in the movie as the documentary filmmaker.
Bruce.
How important to you, just out of curiosity, is the realisticness?
Not at all.
The veracity of the mock doc conceit.
I kind of let it go pretty quickly in this movie because the film, the way that it's shot kind of makes you want to forget about it. And I think as well as that, like, we have been raised so much on The Office, Parks and Rec, even Modern Family.
And none of those shows feel like documentaries.
No, they don't at all. And they just basically, it's an excuse for characters to talk directly to the camera, which this movie utilizes as well.
Mm-hmm. But these characters, I mean, I really did come to love would be the wrong word, but empathize with them on this trip. I think this movie really does get at that feeling of
like me and Will sitting before we do a live show and going like, we're not going out till at least 20 people are out there.
And I'm like, is Justin out of his dressing room? I will not go out first.
Wait, the chairs are different sizes. This is unacceptable. Yeah, and the way that like all the little things, the practical jokes that they pull on each other, even though that there's one thing they talk about that's like, oh my God.
I know. The movie actually reminded me kind of Cocksucker Blues on this viewing, just the way that it captures the lack of glamour. Even the one scene where they basically get groupies, it's like the saddest.
Don't they steal their money too?
Yeah, they do. They meet at some shitty diner somewhere.
They're like, are you rock stars? They're like, oh, yep, we are. Or we're in a band.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is joy in the performing in the movie, which you do see.
There is.
Yeah.
And that I think is actually so important. Like the musical scenes of this movie work.
The music is good.
They're not like Spinal Tap in the sense where you're supposed to laugh at them.
Mm-hmm. You're supposed to understand, oh, wow, this is a talented band that due to, the actions mostly of the lead singer, they weren't able to get to the next level. And I think that's why the movie works as well as it does. There's not really, other than the kind of like formal techniques, there's no suspension of disbelief because you buy all of these guys and what's going on.
I mean, it has these very authentic emotions in it. It captures something of that like mid to late 30s feeling of like for a lot of these guys, it's sort of like their last chance of success, really, before the dreams really recede.
The success is just playing these shows. There's no other plan beyond that.
I mean, they have different ideas of success too. There's one who has a shot at something at a significantly greater success. And then for the others, it's sort of just like this is it. This is the venue for it.
Yeah, I just want to get out. I want to play with my friends. I put that in air quotes considering how often they fight throughout the movie and that hopefully nothing horrible happens. And spoiler alert, it does.
And it's weird. Like there is a chemistry between them too, but it's the chemistry of like longtime friends who don't like each other anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the two main guys, Joe Dick and Billy Talent, you see through footage of like, oh, they've been friends since they were teenagers. Like, so this is a long-term relationship. that, time comes, they slowly start to part, and one of them cannot let that go. Even though that it's a little odd that they haven't really done anything for 5 years, because it feels like it's almost a relationship that's starting to fray right there, as opposed to the last gasp, which is what the movie's showing. How do you feel about the ending of the movie without getting into spoilers?
I mean, it really catches me off guard.
It does, yes. But when I think about it, I'm like, oh, that's like the classic, not to name a filmmaker that we speak about on the podcast all the time, but like if you don't know how to end a movie, that's how you end the movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's powerful.
It is, yeah. Especially the way it just goes to black right after the credits.
Yeah.
I think I knew about the ending before I actually saw the movie because people, like, it just stuck with people.
I like it on the level of being like the cymbals banging at the end of a symphony. I don't know.
Now, of course, he's in Canada, so I'm curious to know what kind of press or attention Hardcore Logo did. Did it play like a lot of film festivals? It must have, right?
I remember this was about the time when, as a kid, I started looking at the ads in the newspaper arts sections, and I can confirm that Hardcore Logo was advertised in the Toronto Star. It played theaters. It was a significant release.
So how come he didn't direct another, he has a film, Platinum, from 1997, which I believe is a TV movie about an up-and-coming indie band. It has one log on Letterboxd, and that's it. And then he doesn't make, I'm going to say theatrical in air quotes, but probably the most money he ever had to work with until he makes a movie in 2001. That's a long gap between what is technically probably his breakthrough and actually being able to make another non-TV movie.
I mean, that reeks to me of like a lot of development deals, a lot of meetings, a lot of projects that didn't happen.
What? Probably a lot of, hey, you could direct this DTV sequel or something you don't feel passionate about. And he's like, nah, no thank you.
But what if I told you that in the year 2001, he made his most commercial film yet, a movie that I'm gearing up to...
I would argue that maybe Pontypool is his most commercial film.
Well, on the face of it, commercial. Yes. I'm gearing up to sort of sound like I'm making fun of this movie, but I actually kind of liked it.
I kind of liked it too.
Yeah, thank you.
For a film that has a very bad reputation.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that the people who don't like it are wrong. I'm just saying I kind of liked it. And I went in with zero expectations. So anything that just kind of amused me, I was going to be in the tank for.
This movie only has 315 watches on Letterboxd.
I mean, I'm surprised it's that many.
So the movie we're talking about is 2001 Picture Claire, which is we keep talking it up.
It has a high wattage Hollywood cast of Juliette Lewis, Gina Gershon, and Mickey Rourke, as well as
Mickey Rourke for an hour of shooting, probably no more than that.
I think he left his car running. He came in, they rolled, and then he went back out.
Something I do like about Bruce McDonald's films, though, is that he does keep a stock company. Like the same actors will show up again and again.
We got Callum Keith Rennie back.
Yeah, who played Billy Talent in Hardcore Logo.
Yeah. So this movie, I like this movie again.
This movie, so you look at it and you look at the cover and it looks like the million of films that you would find at Giant Tiger, and you'd be like, what is this? And you pick it up, the DVD, because it's just like...
Juliette Lewis is holding a gun.
Yeah, and Gina Gershon has been just inserted in the behind her, and that's it.
So generic DTV action movie, that's what it looks like. It's a sort of neo-noir set in the mean streets of T.O.
And boy, it's going to remind you it's in T.O. every time it changes scenes, because there's on-screen text letting you know what street they're on. Almost as if Bruce McDonald wants, we love Picture Claire. We can't wait to visit all the locations.
I mean, this was an incredibly emotional experience for me, again, as a lifelong Torontonian, seeing
all the places we walk every day.
Turn of the millennium. I mean, when we see Juliette Lewis standing in front of Speaker's Corner, when we see a billboard for Now Magazine, we see
that billboard for Now Magazine 100 times.
Oh man, think free. That's what I say.
So the plot. Okay, well, I need to talk a little bit about when this movie started.
I can untangle it.
But I almost I jumped out of my seat when Juliette Lewis started doing narration in French. Now, Will not have the same reaction that I did, which was what is she doing? Because in French, it sounds like it's very weird because it doesn't sound like she understands what she's saying. And I checked, she doesn't speak French, so she was probably coached through it. But it sounds like she's the mumble, marble mouse Juliette Lewis with a Quebecois accent.
Yeah.
And so this film actually has a great gimmick, which is Juliette Lewis, her apartment is burnt down in Montreal, and then she goes to Toronto to meet somebody she had a fling with to see if she can stay with him.
And basically, her apartment is burned down because she informed on a drug ring.
Yeah.
She discovers when she arrives in Toronto while looking for him that he has a new gallery show where there are pictures of her, basically from their tryst, that she didn't expect to be
And
there.
she does not like to be photographed.
So she goes looking for her, but she ends up at a donut shop where she meets big Hollywood star Mickey Rourke, has a brief...
Man, I wonder, isn't he wearing like sunglasses in this scene? They could have just propped him up.
They put his lines on the glasses.
Yeah.
But hey, very charismatic in the 30 seconds we see him in. He's basically there at the table and he says, don't bother me. In comes Gina Gershon. He strangles him with a piano wire or something, kills him. She and Juliette Lewis basically leave the place around the same time. And so outside are bad people who mix up their identities.
Yeah, they think that Juliette Lewis committed the murder, even though that they do want Gina Gershon for something else. These Hitchcock-style complications.
De Palma-ian complications, I would even say.
Well, so here, Bruce McDonald is playing with stuff that he would kind of build the Tracy Fragments, a future
That's
movie
right.
about, which is split screen.
If you don't know the Tracy Fragments, that was a movie starring Elliot Page right after, well, I think it was shot before Juno, but it came out after. And it was made out of a lot of... How would you describe it? It's like there were just a lot of
like
fragments.
a mosaic.
It was a mosaic of scenes.
Yeah.
And in fact, Bruce McDonald even released all of the raw footage online so that you, the viewer, could make your own movie out of the raw footage. This has that mosaic split screen.
when they pop up,
Yeah, that aesthetic.
So it's
to
not
it.
like 1, 2, it's like 7.
Yeah.
And he does some interesting stuff in it. Like sometimes it's showing an imaginary sequence of what could happen.
I mean, you feel that he's sort of experimenting a bit with that in the margins of this movie that looks to me like a sort of straight ahead assignment to make a neo-noir.
Like trying to juice it. Like a script that he's like, all right. Even though I believe he's credited as co-writer on it. No, he is not. It's someone named Semi Chelis, who is the sole writer on this. And yeah, because the plot is not that interesting.
It's pretty contrived. It's pretty ridiculous. And I mean, the
people keep running into each other
Yeah.
and being like, oh no.
and the cast, I mean, Lewis, I'm afraid, is pretty miscast.
But I like Juliette. Why would they not hire? I mean, I know why they didn't, because Juliette
they got
Lewis
her.
is a name. Yeah,
Yeah.
so she can do it, because like just hire a Quebecois actor in
Wow.
that role. But I do like the idea of, I mean, I saw one review say like she's more of a fish out of water than like Thor is. Like when she comes to Toronto, she's like, whoa, what is this? Like Montreal is not a small backwater town. Like
Right. And like she doesn't know.
She can't speak English at all.
She doesn't know the language, but even still, I think
Yeah.
she could get around.
if you're in Toronto, a lot of people speak French because you're forced to take it in school. But yeah, so I like that idea of kind of like being disconnected from what's going on and not being able to communicate.
But I even kind of liked her in this movie because I just generally liked this hard movie to rationally defend, but I like the sort of overheated quality to it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like the sort of the strangeness of it. And I think she fits within the tapestry. Her strange performance fits within the weird tapestry of this movie. I don't know if that
absolutely.
makes sense at all.
Like if you're looking for, I want all the stuff to click into place, well, it's not going to work. But if you give it that Brian De Palma pass, like a dreamy kind of.
That's the thing. It's like, okay, he's got this script that's not very good. And I think the way that he films it in this sort of like, I think campy, tongue-in-cheek way is pretty fun. And
Yeah, I agree.
I had a good time following all the threads with these actors. All the actors, I think, kind of giving it a bit of the ham. Gina Gershon, I think, is pretty good.
Yeah, I think she's good. I mean, she could do these kind of movies in her sleep. She's done like 30 of them. So, and she's, when she's asked to come on screen, it's great. But let's get back to the Toronto-ness of this because, oh man, I mean, we're at Union Station. We're running down College Street.
Didn't you weep when you saw the skyline? How it used to look?
Yep. And the geography all makes sense. Like it almost like proudly telling you, like they're going from this point to that point. They stay in Kensington Market. I mean, everybody knows Kensington Market, right? The like three
I also
streets.
think the Toronto setting, I mean, I've said before that Toronto looks pretty cheap a lot of the times when it's in movies, especially when it's playing New York or LA or one of those cities. But there's something about like David Cronenberg obviously uses Toronto really well. Egoyan does too. As this
kind of like urban hellscape that's like empty of all life.
Yeah, sort of like alienating, strange place. Denis Villeneuve did it
does
very
the same
well.
thing in Enemy.
Yeah, and this movie, intentionally or not, I think does it very well too. Just as a strange, disorienting, like nowhere city.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, we're coming back to Save Picture Claire. Are you going to come back and save Hardcore Logo too? Have you ever seen it?
I haven't. Have you seen
No,
it?
it's not good. Yeah.
Oh.
It almost feels like like a Shaggy Dog story. Like, oh, can I get money to make Hardcore Logo 2? Yeah, all right.
I mean, he's made other movies, though, more recently that I quite liked. I mean, Trigger.
I mean, it's great.
I think it's a
which was
beautiful
supposed
film.
to be Hardcore Logo 2. And at the last minute, they switched it.
I also think his recent film Weirdos has a lot to recommend in it as well. And to say nothing of Pontypool, which I think is just a really brilliant exercise.
I think as a filmmaker, he's kind of fascinating in that, like, he seems to fight the, just giving in, if you will. Like, he could make more mainstream, easy to swallow movies, and he doesn't want to.
Well, I really think that in his head, he has a very healthy distinction between the things he does for money and the things that he does for passion. And in fact, I met him once when I was working at the university formerly known as Ryerson University, where he used to be a, student. I interviewed him for, some PR thing there. And he said to me, I have the quote in front of him. I asked him for some advice for the students. And he said, whatever your day job is, whether it's directing a television series or loading a truck, make your own stuff with your gang. To me, that's what it's all about. Don't think you've made it when you're directing an episode of Flashpoint or whatever the thing is. That's just practice. That's just the gym. You have to do your own stuff.
We all love Flashpoint, the police procedural set in Toronto, I believe, that stars Hugh Dillon of Hardcore Logo fame.
So there you have it. I mean, straight from the horse's mouth, and I think he lives his politics.
I wish he could make more movies. I wish, because there was a stretch there, I remember 10 years ago, where it felt that, like, he's got 3 movies a year. Like, he was pumping them out like nobody's business.
I wish everybody could make more movies.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking at his filmography right now, and I will just say I do not recognize any of these TV shows. Davian Jonesy's Locker, Sight Unseen, Mallory Towers. I'm sure they're very successful TV shows, and I'm glad he can keep working.
Well, you know what Peter Bogdanovich said about all his made-for-TV movies? Nobody saw them except millions of people.
That's true, I guess. All right. As per usual, you can send us letters at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. And if people want to watch Bruce McDonald films, I know we previously mentioned it, but let's say it again. Canadian International Pictures put out Hardcore Logo on Blu-ray, so pick it up. And if you live in Canada, go into any used physical media place and you will find a Bruce McDonald film there, because there's a lot of DVDs out there and they're absolutely worth to pick up. So our first letter is from Alex, and it's a comment on our Nostalgic Toronto episode, which I feel like we mentioned it, but let's say it again. Very happy to see all the reactions to the people that we discussed.
Yeah, that's right. That was an episode that we did about the Toronto film legends who made us.
Mm-hmm. And he goes, hey guys, really enjoyed your mid to early aughts Toronto nostalgia. As someone who came of age in Toronto a few years before you guys, it brought back fun memories of an older, crummier, but much more endearing Toronto. Not to mention fun moments in cinema history, like when part of the Bloor cinema ceiling collapsed during the premiere of The Corporation. I was not around there. I wanted to let you know that the Trash Palace lives on in Cornwall, Ontario. Wow. Cornwall? Wow, that's really close to where my parents live.
I mean, it lives on here in Toronto as well.
But this is Stacey Case.
Right, okay.
He moved here a few years ago, so did I, in search of a better and cheaper life, and he plays the most mediocre 16mm madness in his screen printing workshop behind a crummy strip mall the first Friday of the month. Stacey unfortunately sold off much of his 16mm collection, but some gems live on. The Boo Boo Monster has become a fan favorite. Are you familiar with the Boo Boo Monster?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard about it either. I clicked on the link and the only thing that comes up is a YouTube video posted by Stacey Case. There is also a chronically underused old movie theater here that mostly plays Angel Studios movies.
Angel Studios is the studio that made that, sorry, what was the fuck was it called? Oh yeah, Sound of Freedom, that Jim Caviezel. They make movies like that.
And semi-professional cover band shows. Shania Twin, anyone? It would be a great venue for an Important Cinema Club traveling roadshow. I don't think
Let's have our hardcore logo.
I don't think that we have enough of an audience to do a traveling show anywhere. I'm not going out until there's at least 5 people out there. Always great to see a Franco-Ontarian boy from Castleman like Justin make it on the big city movie podcast scene. Love the show.
The big city movie podcast
and
scene.
keep up the great work, Alex.
It sure is competitive over here.
Yep.
Everyone's vying for studio space here at Justin's apartment.
So I just want to name some of the movies that Stacey Case, because he shared the amazing program Stacey would do at
so
his
good
screen printing workshop, and it includes Sudden Fury, the classic,
great film,
which basically Vinegar Syndrome put that out, and that was only because like I saw it there And I think I dragged Peter Kaplowski to see it when it played at the Bloor, when they did a scan of it. And then Peter got in contact with the director was Vinegar Syndrome, and that's how they put it out.
So you're telling me that all roads lead back to you?
Yeah. No, well, Stacey Case played it. He has the print of it,
okay.
so it wouldn't be me.
I mean, Sudden Fury is a great film.
I love Sudden Fury. Star Crash, classic.
Well, hey, yeah.
Lady Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Recently, it's like an Italian film, isn't it?
The Rosalba Neri classic.
And something that Stacey Case and like Jonathan Culp used to love to do this too is like classroom movies.
Classroom movies, yes. I have a DVD.
I have one too, yeah.
A Trash Palace classroom films collection, yeah.
Force on Thunder Mountain. I don't know what that is. 1978 sci-fi nature.
Oh, wait, is this the one I think I went to Trash Palace once and they played, or maybe it was somewhere else. I saw some movie with Mickey Rooney in it, some backwoods, like bayou set, like girl in prison movie that had Mickey Rooney.
Maybe it was that, yeah. And also the last one on this list, Cornwall Home Movies. So they're just playing home movies with live music by Stagger Lee.
Just stuff that they found in Cornwall.
Probably they just found like in flea markets and stuff like that.
God, let's take a trip to Cornwall. Let's visit Trash Palace.
Yeah, my mom would be happy to see me come by. So.
I've got a car. We should do it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Will has a car. It's a new era of the Important Cinema Club.
Yeah.
You know what? Pay gas. We'll be there, right? Driving down to Florida for a live show.
Yeah. I think that'd be great.
We should do more live shows because I don't think we've done one in pre-pandemic. Was the last time we did it?
I mean, unless you count our introductions at the Fox Theater.
I don't count that.
Which, by the way,
yes,
on July 9th, come to the Fox Theater because we're showing Hollywood Boulevard, directed by Joe Dante and Alan Arkush, in tribute to the late, great Roger Corman. I will remind you again, I've said this last couple of weeks. In 1975, at Roger Corman's New World Pictures, his trailer editors, Joe Dante and Alan Arkush, came to him and said, "We will make the cheapest movie in your company's history if you give us $70,000. And he said, "Sure." And they were like, "Can we use stock footage?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." So they made this wild, crazy, hilarious exploitation movie about the making of exploitation films. Hollywood Boulevard. Godzilla is in it. He is in it.
Paul Bartel,
Dick
Mary
Miller,
Warnoff,
all the people. And like, if you want to feel what it was like to make movies for Roger Corman in the golden age, this movie. And you'll never see this again in a theater. Can I emphasize that?
In Toronto?
Probably not,
No,
right?
I don't think... Has it played in Toronto?
Probably not since 1976.
Yeah, so come and see it. We're putting it on. And on Patreon this week, it's our usual monthly What We've Been Watching. Lots of stories.
Yeah, we talk about such things as...
You saw Dick Tracy on 35mm.
Oh, could you imagine? Could you imagine what that experience was like?
We talk about your New York trip a little bit. We talk about me watching the new Guy Ritchie movie. So much fun to be had.
So much fun.
You got to check that out at patreon.com/The Important Cinema Club. So next week, I'm surprised we've never done this topic before, but like movies about movie making, which I love. I love movies where it's all about like the grind and the process of putting things on screen. And I think I have a pretty good list of ones that people would not expect. Now, I was looking on Letterboxd. I'm like, someone must have made like 1,000 movie list. And someone did. And I went, let me put it in alphabetical order. Let's go. Impossible Horror is on this list.
You're right. Impossible Horror. Yeah.
We will not be talking about that next week, but we will be talking about Abel Ferrara's Dangerous Game. Are you a fan of that movie?
I love it, yeah.
Okay, I'm sure you probably picked up the new Vinegar Syndrome.
Yes, I did. It cost me an arm and a leg.
Those are supposed to be mounted like and displayed on the wall all alone.
Yeah, and then people can come in and say, "Why do you have Blu-rays?"
That's a 4K UHD. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We will also be talking about Viva Erotica, the film about making Category 3 pictures in Hong Kong. I've actually never seen it.
You've never seen it?
Nope.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm excited to watch it again.
And also, I don't remember what it's actually in English, which is Bertrand Tavernier's film about making films in the studio system during Nazi occupation in France.
Okay, just as an experiment. Okay, let's say I'm saying to you, movie about movies. What's the first thing you think of?
Day for Night.
Yeah, you got it.
All right.
You got it.
Yeah, I got it. I like that movie. It does feel a little cold, though, because, it's in that style. I watch it maybe even too many times.
Do you think Jean-Luc Godard was right when he said, well, if you were honest, you would talk about how you were fucking the leading lady?
Absolutely.
He was.
Yes.
Yeah, he was a bit of an asshole to say it, but he was honest.
Right.
Yeah.
Listen, Jean-Luc Godard, people just hated him for how honest he was, right? That's the main reason the guy. Yeah, but I don't want to talk about the obvious one. There's a million of those, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk about, that's a wide international swath of like different ways to take on movie. Like another one about movie making, I think about The Stuntman. Did you ever see that one? The Richard Rush
I
movie?
actually have not seen The Stuntman.
Great movie.
Great big oversight.
But that's another one that, like, all the ones that I mentioned all take it kind of realistically. The Stuntman is one of those movies where it's like, okay, you'll see the scene play out for 3 minutes, and then they'll be like, cut at the end of it. Hooper is another one about making movies.
Now we're talking.
Yeah. Listen, like big screen comedian failures, this can spin out into its own series because there's a million
We'll
movies
have to do
out
a documentary one where we talk about Giuseppe Makes a Movie, Lost,
movies.
Lost in La Mancha,
Yeah.
Demon Lover Diary.
I love Demon Lover Diary. Did you know Donald G. Jackson, the wild filmmaker Demon Lover Diary, shot second unit on the Terminator?
Whoa.
Yes, I learned that recently.
That's probably why it was good.
Yeah, the Fred Olin Ray book. He was just pals with James Cameron. They were just like people coming up in LA, and he's like, hey man, can you help me? Then he would go on, of course, to direct Roller Gator, multiple Joe Estevez films.
Yeah.
You know what? Donald G. Jackson, there's a guy, he had a Jess Franco-like career because like he was a guy who just liked making movies.
We should do an episode on
His
him.
movies are very tough to watch. But
I mean,
yes.
I know, but
Even like the best one, like Hell Comes to Frogtown.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of that one. But you know what? Maybe when I see like Rollerblade 7.5, I'll be like, I get, he actually had a process. Zen filmmaking is the way that he approached it.
I mean, the vision to put Conrad Brooks and Joe Estevez in
Together.
the same movie.
I mean, it's kind of like Time Cop. Like they shouldn't touch like the universe.
Yeah.
So that's what we'll be talking about next week. And until then, my name's Justin Clue.
I'm Will Sloan.
Thanks for listening. As per usual, a little reminder that if you join our Patreon, you can also join us in our Discord, where you can talk about the recent episode, talk about what movies you've been seeing, physical media, books, whatever you want. And I would also like to thank some of our new patrons, who include David Watkins, Aaron Pickadash, Thomas Reed, David Soul, Lost Lonely Dude, Cam Ainsworth, Liam O'Connell Becker, Gage Miles, Trell House, Andrew W., Tor Peterson, Matt Cody, Alexander Lee, and Kara and Dawson. Thank you very much for becoming patrons. We could not keep doing this without you. All right, I have a lot of stuff that I want to talk about.
Yeah,
First of all, let's just talk about what's going on at the Review in our city right now.
Okay, so in Toronto, the Review is one of the hubs of film culture.
It's the most vibrant film hub.
Yeah.
No contest.
And it's like, so there's the TIFF Lightbox.
Yes.
And that's like Lincoln Center. It's enormous.
But what's playing? Is there anything interesting? They'll have something every now and then.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the TIFF Lightbox is the best funded one.
Yes.
And so, like, they'll do Powell and Pressburger on 35 millimeter.
But you wish it was like that every week, though.
And it's hard to get tickets there sometimes, actually.
It is, yes. Because they don't play the big films in the big theaters, because those are rented by production companies on, I think, maybe a year-by-year basis. So,
oh, my God.
I mean, when they open, they just movies as far as the eye could see, and just like weird stuff. Like, we're going to do all this filmmaker that doesn't get talked about, his entire filmography.
Man, when they did the complete Jean-Luc Godard, and it was like me watching all those Maoist movies from the 70s.
On film, too.
On film, me and 10 other people, one of whom was always Bart Testa.
Yeah.
Then,
Places like TIFF, though, like, they should not have, they're a non-for-profit. They should not have to hit a, like, goal of money.
And yet, seemingly, they do.
They do. Like, that is what, like, haunts them at all times.
Yeah.
Like, you have to hit these certain budget goals. Anyway.
But the Review is, like, in some ways, it is the hub,
So, basically, there was the Royal, which was a kind of movie hub pre-pandemic, where a lot of the programmers at the Review then moved over from the Royal to the Review, and then they hired a bunch more and made it like, this is all that we're doing, is everything is basically a program. Almost everything is a program that's hosted by like an individual or multiple individuals, and you can follow it, which allows people to go like, oh, I'm willing to take a chance on this because I like their program.
Yeah. So for example, like Brendan Ross will have Neon Dreams. And so Brendan will show like, Big Trouble in Little China one week. And then he shows enough movies like that people like Phantom of the Paradise. And that'll give him the capital to show something a little more experimental or strange.
As opposed to Lazy Blast Film Society, which would give nothing to the audience. And we're like, we just want to play movies that no one has heard about.
Yeah. I guess you guys got a special deal with the Royal on that. But what's important to know about the Review is it's the most vibrant, in many ways, the most vibrant rep theater in the city. We have many great rep theaters in this city, by the way. Many great rep theaters.
Yeah, the Fox.
Paradise is very good. But the Review, I think everyone would agree, is very special. And they do a very good job. And their programming is very smart. It's very eclectic. There's something for everyone there.
Yeah, they've really figured out that like they advertise guy sings of like the 35th anniversary of this, and that can guide their programming.
Well, they'll do things like they'll do the 20th anniversary of She's the Man, and that's great. That's great for the people who like She's the Man.
Yeah.
And then they'll do The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms on 16 millimeter. You know, like who else has that kind of range? They'll do the Toronto Silent Film Festival will go there.
Oh yeah, so it's like very eclectic, a lot of art stuff, a lot of cult stuff, and it has like a rabid fan base as well. You can buy like a $400 pass, and you can see as many movies as you want. You get a free popcorn. Like it encourages people to go as much as possible and build that kind of community there.
Whenever I go there, it's either busy or sold out. Now,
let's take a step back. And what was the review 15 years ago to you? To me, it was a ghost theater that like I almost never went to.
Well, I went to it sometimes.
Yes.
It was much more of a second run theater though.
Yes, which cannot exist anymore in Toronto because Cineplex has a monopoly and does not allow second run movies to happen within the city center, which is ridiculous and should be illegal.
Cineplex signs certain contracts with distributors that give them like exclusive rights to movies within a certain radius, and Cineplex will sit on movies. They will play something.
Just one in one theater.
Yeah. They have a 30 screen megaplex in the middle of Toronto where they'll show like, you know, Wonka 5 months into its run every day at 1 o'clock.
Just so a second run cinema can't get it.
That's right. So second run cinemas have gotten creative, and they created these very like event based programming.
The repertory
styles.
theaters.
Yeah.
So in 2007, the Review was bought by a eccentric rich guy.
He was 79 years old because people were saying what his name was, and I was looking him up because I was going to write a letter of complaint.
Well, because we haven't even said what happened yet.
Well, okay, well, maybe we should say what happened.
Yes,
because this week the staff at the Review announced that basically they were maybe facing eviction. The business was facing eviction at the end of the month because the landlord...
Yeah, who owns the property.
Yeah, he wouldn't agree to renew the lease.
Now, what people need to understand about the Review, too, is that it's a non-for-profit and it's run by a board. And so what's happened is the Review in the last few years, post-pandemic, has never been more successful, ever. Probably in its run. And we should also say, the Review has been open since 1911. It's been a theater.
That's right.
So it's more than like 100 years old. And so the board has been running it. It's been so successful that the indication that we get is the landlord has decided in his mind, I want to run this successful cinema and turn it from a nonprofit to a for-profit cinema.
And by all accounts, he doesn't like the programming.
Yes, he finds it, I guess, not like classic enough. We should say that, it must be the son of the landlord, right, that's doing this, or the grandson of the landlord.
So yeah, people were saying what his name was, and then I looked it up, and it's like, he got this property in 2007 when he was 79, and I thought, they must be dealing with his son. No, he's 96.
He's 96 years old, and he's like, I just want the board gone. I want to take control of the cinema.
And we're on Monday, things continue as usual, and anybody there can work for me. Now, what he has apparently failed to understand is the board that runs the theater. He owns the building,
yes,
but he doesn't run the theater. So they own the projector. They own the seats.
They probably own the screen too.
Yeah. So like they've said that if he kicks them out, they're going to take all those things.
There was an announcement that was made on the internet through like Instagram and Twitter that they're basically like, we could not figure this out, and that they're kicking us out on June 30th. And so July 1st, he's taking control. And yeah. So the thing about this is that it's wild, and that they have talked about that, like, he said he's going to raise our rent to $15,000 a month. And we said, okay. And then he said, I don't want to take the check now. So like that is
bad faith negotiation.
That's bad faith negotiation. Yeah. So I don't know if that's going to like stall things, because like the Review has programming into July. And like this like took them aback as well, of like, I can't believe this is like, what the hell? This guy sucks.
I cannot emphasize enough. This man is 96.
He is literally Mr. Burns in this situation.
It's insane.
Yeah. I don't know what he's doing.
Why does he even want to do this?
I don't know. You know why? Because everybody he knows is dead. So he's got nothing else. He sees something very successful and he's like, well, I want to take control of it. Yeah. Like, what is he gonna? I think he thinks he'll take control and like all the programmers stay on.
Yeah, because he wants everyone to work for him.
Yeah, and he wants it to be for profit. But no one is going to do that if they kick out the management, which the programmers like working with.
And also, like, you're insane. He apparently wants to make it a second run theater again.
He doesn't understand that you can't.
Yeah. So.
But like, he doesn't even want the programmers then. Like, I don't understand what he's doing. Anyway, anyone listening to this, there's actually a petition going around, so you can sign that.
Yeah,
I would recommend doing it.
Yeah,
please.
I mean, it can't hurt.
No, it can't hurt. Well, because the guy, he's old, and as people have said, like he bought the theater because he wanted to seem like a good man.
Right.
Because like there was articles in 2007, he was like, I don't want anything to do with this theater. You guys just run it, save me a seat, and that's all I need. So he cares about what people think about him. Like that.
And so now the strategy from the people at the review seems to be shame him in the press.
Yeah.
And they're getting a lot of help from him because his quotes are pretty
awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, good God. Have you seen, I saw somebody comparing it to that new show, Ren Fair. He's like the guy from Ren Fair.
I don't know what that show is.
Oh, it's a good documentary series that's out now about a eccentric old man who runs a Ren Fair.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where, like, can they shame him into not doing this? Does he just, because he's going to board it up and it will just sit there empty until I guess it gets gutted and condos are built there?
I mean,
tragic. It's in a very, like, desirable area of town. Do you know why? Because there's places like The Review there. Like, why would you want to live there otherwise?
This is what I hate about Toronto. It's what I hate about
city,
every city. There are a lot of people who know the cost of things and the value of nothing, because this theater, which has been there for over 100 years, like it is one of the hubs of multiple communities.
Yeah.
It's one of the hubs of that neighborhood. And if you put a Shoppers Drug Mart in there, it's not the same thing.
Then you don't have a hub.
Yeah.
You don't have, why would I want to live there?
Right. And I don't think
they don't understand that.
Nobody can tell me that Toronto is a more enjoyable city to live in than it was 15 years ago.
And if you're saying, like, why don't they make it a heritage building? Yeah, they can. And there'll be a Tim Hortons inside, and they'll just be the front thing, like they've done multiple times in Toronto to theaters already.
That's right.
Like, it should be illegal that all the theaters that were gutted to make into rock climbing gyms. How many do we need of those?
I know.
Rest in peace, Toronto Underground Cinema.
Rest in peace, the Metro.
Yeah, the Metro as well. And the one that my dad used to go to that was in the East End. That's now a Tim Hortons, but with the front of a cinema.
Anything that used to have a balcony is a good rock climbing gym place.
Anyway, so if you can sign that petition, if you search The Review, like on any social media, like you'll find a million links.
We'll link to it.
Yeah, we'll link to it as well. We got to talk a little bit about, you went down to New York City again.
Yeah, that's
right.
We
were just there.
Well, I went to the city of New York because there was the first...
They were like, right here, Mr. Sloan. We're used to you coming.
Your table's waiting. They should give me an apartment down there. Somebody,
the Important Cinema Club, New York apartment.
Mayor Eric Adams should come to me and say, why, here you go. We have an apartment right on Central Park East.
You love crypto. You love it. You gotta get on his good side.
Yeah.
All right. So you went down. Why, Will?
Because at the Spectacle Theater was the first, I believe, the first ever New York City-based in-person retrospective of the films of Matt Farley and Charlie Roxburgh. I was one of the people doing Q&A there. When it comes back, which I'm sure it will, we want to do this again.
Yeah, I just couldn't go because I was in New York 3 weeks ago, and it's like I can't afford to go down again.
Yeah, it was just one of those things. I really wanted to do it.
Yeah, and you had to be there.
I had to be there, and it was so great. The Spectacle, if you don't know about it, it's a volunteer-run micro cinema in Brooklyn.
I still have not been.
Because we tried to go last time.
I got their times wrong.
We got their times wrong, yeah. But it's great. I mean, it has 40 seats or something. And
my dream theater.
Yeah, it was perfect. So it was pretty easy to sell it out. Matt Farley and Charlie Roxburgh were there. And I mean, it warms my heart because they spent so much time making these movies.
Have they ever done that? Go like somewhere else together to talk about their films?
I don't know. They've certainly never had a screening like this.
Yeah. So they've gone, I know Matt's gone to like colleges and stuff like that. They've done screenings. So, but them together at like a retrospective of their work, I don't think that's happened yet, right?
Yeah. And I mean, the stuff could not have gone over better. And I'll tell you, the movies, the order of the movies was Don't Let the River Beast Get You.
Get them in.
Local Legends.
All right. Explain.
Heard She Got Married.
Yep.
And then
Magic
Spot. And then finally Heard She Got Murdered. And I would say if you want a crash course in Moturnism,
watch them in that order.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like River Beast shows you the concept, and then Local Legends is like, okay, who made this? Who would make this? And then Heard She Got Married is like, okay, you think that's all they can do? Well, they can do this too.
Yeah.
And then Magic Spot builds on and even sort of counterpoints some of the ideas presented in those previous movies.
And then Heard She Got Murdered is like, all right, let's blow it up.
Exactly.
Yes.
Heard She Got Murdered is like, we answer to no one.
Yes, exactly.
And that's so powerful.
So what do you think the most people were at? Because there were some that were sold out, right? I think River Beast was.
I think they were pretty much all sold out except for maybe Heard She Got Murdered.
Yeah, because that's at the end.
It was the last one. But Magic Spot had like pretty much standing room only, I think. There were, I think, people standing at that one. And it was such a magical experience because the air conditioning wasn't working. And there was a heat wave in New York, okay?
Yeah.
So we were all dying in there. But I have never seen an audience more in sync with the movie. And like the joke of that movie where it's like people are straight-facedly explaining the time travel to people, all the weird lore, it just kept getting funnier and funnier. And then when Kevin McGee sings the song at the end, people were crying.
Really?
I was looking at the rows.
No.
I saw you people. There was crying.
Wow.
And I was crying.
You couldn't see them through your tears.
Yeah. So it was just an incredibly powerful experience. And I was just thinking like, there are landmarks in the Moturn story.
Yeah.
And this is going to be one of them. And, sooner or later, Metrograph or Roxy or one of those big ones, they're going to do the Moturn retrospective. And eventually we're going to get Matt and Charlie on the Criterion channel.
Now, Matt and Charlie, they did Q&As, right?
They did.
That must have been interesting because I don't think Charlie's done many Q&As.
I mean, Charlie's great in the Q&As, but Matt...
I mean, Matt is like a fish to water. He loves it.
I mean, you've never seen a man more in his element, just being surrounded by...
people who are like, we love you.
And, outside the theater and stuff.
They probably all came up to him and like shook his hand.
Yeah, they came up to him, but then he went up to them. He was like, hey, I don't think I know you. Like, how's it going?
Real Dwayne Johnson-esque.
Yeah, and I mean, he's like super funny. Charlie's really funny too.
Oh, Charlie's so funny.
So yeah, it was great hanging out with them a little bit, frankly.
That rules in the big city.
In the big city. I mean, that's another thing. I mean, seeing the two of them in the big city, there's a sort of like, I don't think they would object to me saying this. It's like, it doesn't feel right in some way. I associate them so much with just like
small town,
Manchester, New Hampshire, and Danvers. It reminded me, like bringing them to the big city reminded me a bit of Pecker, the John Waters movie.
So we'll have many other events like that I feel like we'll discuss. Criterion Chat, that's our final goal. They're going up there.
That's the final goal. That's the big boss. And I almost want to say, to Criterion Channel right now, what are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for?
You and I both know this will happen.
Oh man, is it going to cost too much money?
Yeah.
It won't. We're telling you right now.
Like if Local Legends was on the Criterion Channel, folks, if you're listening and you haven't seen Local Legends,
how difficult is it going to be to find them like one or two kind of like rich eccentrics that are like, here's $10,000 to make your movie?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. Like it's got to get to that point eventually. A James Joycean kind of, what's the term when you have someone that pays for stuff?
Oh, a patron.
Patron, yes. Patrons, as all our loving listeners that are patrons at patreon.com. All right, one last thing I want to talk about. A filmmaker that I love to hear stories about his filmmaking, his passions.
Oh, okay, let me see if I can guess. Vincent Gallo.
Oh, yeah. Finally, he's written a book composed of his mad Instagram ramblings. No. It is Fred Olen Ray has written his biography, which came out of nowhere. There was no like, oh, he's writing his biography. It's coming out. Basically, Will sent me a link that Joe Dante tweeted about it, which, number one, made me happy that Joe Dante and Fred are friends.
And Fred Olen Ray, just in case you don't know who he is, ultra prolific filmmaker, Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, Beverly Hills Vamp, many Hallmark Christmas movies, Sniper Special Ops with Steven Seagal.
Yep. That he's a filmmaker that defined the 80s and 90s, especially the direct-to-video rental era.
And a true film buff. Such a film buff that he's one of the last people who gave work to Ed Wood.
Yes. He is like one of those guys that even reading this book, he'll talk about every actor that he casts. That's like, oh, it's the daughter that was in like, I don't know, Son of Dracula or something like that. And I brought her into the movie. She's 80 years old. So his autobiography, Hellbent on Hollywood, it's great because if you don't know the Fred Olen Ray story, and I know many of you don't, he came from nothing. That like his family didn't want him to get into any creative arts, but he got into it through working through television. He came penniless. He was basically one of his sons was abandoned at 4 years old with him in Hollywood when they had no place to stay. And you get all of this in this book. You also get the making of Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. You get him spotting Wyatt Ordung, the screenwriter of Robot Monster, in the unemployment line.
I'm so glad to hear that because there's always been part of me that wondered if Wyatt Ordung was a real person.
Yep. Well,
he was so real that he needed money.
Now, how did Fred Olen Ray spot him on? Oh, he said that he saw the sheet that he was holding and he saw the name. Like he didn't recognize him on site, which would be very weird in like 1980-ish, 85-ish when it happened. Anyway, Fred writes almost like a pulp writer. Like it's like bam, bam, bam. Like you just get all of it. The first few chapters, Joe Dante says it's a breathy read. It's very harrowing. He hasn't spoken to his dad in 35 years. Basically, his mom like moved him from town to town because she was bored and kind of destroyed his life in some way and made him very nervous. But he just goes through it. and you follow it as he goes up and up. And you can be calm in the fact that he does achieve success, even though that he has to drive his boy on the bus every morning, 90 minutes for a 3-hour total round trip. So he can go work at like a 3D lab trying to make enough money as he's shooting Biohazard during the weekends. Love it. I mean, Fred Olen Ray, Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, he shot in like basically a weekend because he had the gear long enough. Like, those are the stories that, I mean, love hearing stories about the guy. And what really made me excited, at the end of the book, I read it. So I got it. I got home at night at 8 p.m. The book was there. Started reading, read almost all of it, went to bed, woke up, finished it, and then put it down. That's how fast I read it.
Oh, man.
And last sentence, he's like, oh, and a volume 2 is coming where I talk more about it. I was like, yes, more. So check it out. Hellbent on Hollywood. I feel like it'll be like one of the great, like cult filmmaker autobiographies that out there. So check it out. It's on Amazon. It's printed on demand. That's where you can get it.
Can't wait to read it.